Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke.
Glory to you, Lord.
Every year, the parents of Jesus went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up as usual for the festival. When the festival was ended and they started to return, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but his parents did not know it. Assuming that he was in the group of travelers, they went a day's journey. Then they started to look for him among their friends and relatives. When they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem to search for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. And all who heard him were amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. And his mother said to him, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." He said to them, "Why were you searching for me? Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" But they did not understand what he said to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth and was obedient to them. His mother treasured all these things in her heart, and Jesus increased in wisdom and in years and in favor with God and human beings. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Well, I hope you had some good Christmas celebrations with your families and loved ones. And today's feast is really a continuation of the celebration of Christmas as we ponder the mystery of the Holy Family. When we think about it, on first pondering, a mother without sin, Mary, a father, Joseph, who becomes a great saint in the church, and a boy, Jesus, also sinless, who is God made flesh. Sounds like a family combination that could never have anything to say to real life today in family. But when we look at what they experienced, I think that their reality can speak to us more than it might seem on first look. Let's first of all remind ourselves of some of the details about the Holy Family that we're very familiar with. That the Holy Family began with a young teenager getting pregnant and her fiancé not knowing how it happened. A divorce is dodged because a message is given to Joseph in a dream. And then the long-awaited birth takes place into a cave-like thing, kind of dug out into a rock where animals dwelt, and it was stinky, smelly, and not very pleasant at all. And then not long after the birth, the king of the land wants to kill the child, so they have to skedaddle to get out of there to protect the child. A few weeks later, when it comes to the time to bring the child to the temple, as was the Jewish tradition, Mary and Joseph, because they're of the working class, are not able to make very much of an offering at all, which was expected of them. So all they could offer was a pair of turtle doves or 2 pigeons, which was the offering of the working class poor. And then when they finally get to the temple to offer Jesus to God, they encounter some people who give them insight into something of their future. For example, they're told, this child Jesus that you're holding is a child who is going to be a sign that is opposed. So they know that this child is going to bring some conflict around. And then Mary is told, a sword will pierce your heart also. Can you imagine? You're just a few weeks after the birth and you're being told these very challenging, difficult truths about what this child is going to bring into your life. When we consider what it was like back in Nazareth, which was just a small town, a few hundred people, what we're understanding today from scholarship is that the life of the working poor, which Mary and Joseph were part of in terms of their housing, usually took place in what was maybe a one-room house, at the very most a two-room house. And in that house would have been an extended family. So Jesus, in this very small dwelling, would have had grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, all living in this small place. So at night it would have been literally body next to body for sleeping. The next time we hear about Jesus is what we heard in our gospel today, where Jesus is 12 years old. They're on a family trip to Jerusalem for the Passover, which they did annually. And in this particular instance, Jesus, unannounced, just leaves the family. This was no neglect on Mary and Joseph's part. They were used to traveling in caravans, family members, etc., townspeople. And so it was not unusual for them not to have Jesus right in front of them at every moment. But Jesus decides that he wants to go to the temple and to sit with the doctors of the law and to discuss with them. Well, Mary and Joseph, after 3 days, can you imagine as parents, not knowing where your child is for 3 days? You would be in a panic. So finally they find him in the temple, and Mary is clearly disappointed with Jesus, and she says to Jesus, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Look, your father and I have been searching for you in great anxiety." You would think Jesus would have said something like, "Sorry, Mom, I didn't mean to offend you or anything like that." But he says, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" And Luke says, "But they did not understand what he was saying to them." So they didn't get him at all. His ways were mysterious to him. This is the only instance in the scriptures where we have a description of this kind of scenario, but it's not hard to imagine that this was not the only time where Jesus said something or did something which was strange and mysterious to them. They just didn't get him. Why? Because he was God. Truly human also, but he's divine. And they were merely human with limited human understandings of things. God's ways are very often mysterious to us. So God, even as a child, can be mysterious to parents. So they didn't get him. They didn't understand him all the time. Finally, when he grows up, gets around the age of 30, begins his public ministry, starts preaching. One day he comes back to Nazareth, to his hometown, and is in the synagogue preaching. On that particular day, he says something that is so angering to the townspeople, and we're told that all in the synagogue were raged at him, so much to the point that they took him to a local hill and they tried to throw him off and to kill him. Well, who was at that synagogue that day? Again, I said Nazareth was a small town, so all of his family members, extended family members, were probably there at the synagogue. Probably among the people who wanted to throw him off the hill. So you can imagine, I've been pondering this lately, what effect that had on Mary's relationships with the extended family, knowing that some of them were probably among that group that wanted to throw Jesus off the hill and kill him. Maybe some of those extended members were part of the family that was living in the household with Mary and Joseph. So Mary certainly had to deal with forgiving and being reconciled with and living with people who tried to kill her very own son. Can you imagine what that was like? We don't know what happened to Joseph. We think that he probably died before Jesus began his public ministry because he's never mentioned once Jesus does that. And then Mary, we know, of course, the end of the story where she has the unenviable task of watching her son die a criminal's death on the cross. One of the things that it's at least tempting to think is that the sinlessness of Jesus and Mary distances them from us. But when you consider what sin is, it's actually just the very opposite. So what is sin? When we look at how it unfolds with our first parents, Adam and Eve, what were they doing? They were trying to be like God, but without God. The irony is that God very much wanted them to become like him through his grace, etc. But they wanted to be like God in an autonomous way, without God. And so in essence, what they were doing was wanting to be like God without God. They were running away from their humanity. And that's at the essence of all sin, that every sin of whatever kind is always some expression of a desire to run from our humanity and its limitations, etc. What we see in Jesus and Mary, who are sinless, is that because they never sinned, they embraced our humanity in a way that we never do because we are sinners. So they never ran from their humanity. They entered into it more fully. They embraced the limitations of being human, all of its uncertainties, more than we do. So their sinlessness, rather than distancing from them very strangely, makes them closer to us in our humanity because they knew more than even we do what it means to be truly human. So as we look at the Holy Family and all they experienced and all that they are, the indications are that it was far from some kind of cozy, undisturbed life that pictures often portray in paintings, etc., that we've seen over the centuries. It was clearly a life that demanded what is demanded of all families, and that is faith. It was by faith that Mary and Joseph could continue serving God despite all the crazy things that they went through, all of the unsurety, all of the obstacles that they faced. So like all families, the Holy Family, they had no crystal ball to look into the future to tell them exactly how things were going to unfold. They had to, like all families, like our families, had to live day by day by day in faith, trusting that God was guiding them into a place that he wanted them to be, that was for their good. And so it is that it is by faith that families today, our families, continue to live life and love in the midst of what I think, and I think we all know, are very difficult times for families. We're living in the midst of these times, and it may just seem like second nature to us, but boy, oh boy, these are really tough times for families. So it's inspiring to me when I think that there are so many families that are trying to be faithful to their call, faithful to God, to provide places of warmth, of love, and truth, despite all of the obstacles that families even today face. How many people care deeply about their family life and are really fighting and struggling to make it happen, and we're very grateful to those people. So today we turn to the Holy Family, who understands very well adversity, change, challenge, and the need to live day by day in faith. We ask for their intercession upon our families today, that through their prayer we may also be taught how to live by faith as they did, and to surrender our families over to the providence, to